All right, thank you all. It is 5:30. I declare this meeting open. This agenda briefing. Thank you for anyone who's joining in online. We are just going to give it a moment. I believe there's some elected members next door, so please bear with us for just a second until they come in.
We're reading our documents.
I have officially opened it.
Can I officially say that that's 1 minute fast?
Sure, I agree. Thank you, councillors and staff. Thank you all. It is 5:30. I have opened the meeting and I just gave us a moment for everybody to come on in. So we are all here now. If I do need to get to an event at 6, and although we just did some working group through some training the other day talking about rushing meetings, that won't be happening. If we get to 6 o'clock, the Deputy Mayor will take over the chairing of this meeting. Are there any declarations of interest, councillors?
Yes, Mr Mayor. 10.4.1 financial interest.
Thank you. 10.4.1. Councillor Andrew will leave the room for that part of the meeting. Any other declarations of interest, councillors? Thank you. We're moving on to the agenda proper. 10.2.1. Any questions, councillors? Thank you. 10.3.1. Questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Just on page 48, it says prepare a collection storage feasibility study for Bragg and the museum. Is this being done in-house or are we having a consultant for that?
We can ask the CEO if he has a response for that. He may want to defer.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't have a response to that, so I'm happy to take that on notice, Deputy Mayor, and provide a response back to you.
Thank you very much. And a further question, if I
Thank
may,
you.
please, Mr. And I don't want to put the new CEO on the spot.
I think
Director.
Gary, the Director, might have a answer to that question.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, it's external. It'll be an external person doing that work.
Thank you. Don't need to take that one on notice now. Thank you, CEO. Deputy Mayor, further question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And on page 49, can't read my own writing, but art photos in the honour board are on hold. Is there any reason for that?
I know there was a bit of work happening around the honour board, trying to get all the councillors on that, which we discussed internally. How that's going to fit in was becoming a little bit problematic because of the number of councillors in the room to do that. So I might ask the CEO. I'm sure the CEO might not struggle to answer that one, but potentially if he can get some support and an update on that. If not, I'll have to be taken on notice.
Thank you, Mayor. I did actually. It's one of the ones I did look at today when I got back around why that was on hold. So I haven't had any conversations around that, but I will get some information on that and relay that back.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Manager of Governance, thank you.
Yeah, I can probably answer that. Thanks, Mr Mayor. As you'll recall, there's some conversations that happened previously between yourself and the Deputy Mayor, and I think a couple of other councillors in that regard. The research that had been done through the Office of the Mayor basically identified with, I'll say, consultants and sign writers coming in that we legitimately do not have sufficient wall space to represent all the people that have been elected to represent the City of Bunbury and the Roads Board prior to that, anywhere within the building. So really next steps is another conversation with yourself and probably the Deputy Mayor as to the way in which we approach that particular project, whether that means we go down the digital interpretive path or otherwise. It's basically a conversation that needs to happen, hence the on hold. We just physically don't have the space anywhere to accommodate all those names.
Sure. Thank you. We'll probably extend that conversation to the wider elected members, I believe, as well. Councillor Steele?
Can I ask a question then? How did Albany manage to do theirs, because they're obviously as old as us, and I know they had that extra room. Does it always all have to be in the actual same location? So could the more current, so the last 50 years of councillors be on one now, and then previous ones be put somewhere in the museum?
I think we can have that conversation, and I would probably invite that conversation to come back to elected members in the briefing session. I know Director Strawn had a fair bit to do with some of this conversation as well, so there might be some more information. But yeah, that'll be the next step. That's why it's on hold now. I think the initial plan was to look at that wall. Obviously, it's not going to happen in that, but there are the one just outside. But we'll have a conversation about what other options, and happy to explore. Thank you, Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, I can't find where I've scribbled on my notes here either, but I note that we've started to look at the town planning scheme and having a look at the review of that. And I think there was two sums of money. One was also for a drainage plan as well. So will we be doing all of those reviews in-house, or will we, at some point, will be getting a consultant? And at what stage will, sorry for such a question, at what stage will councillors be involved in i.e. some workshops, or in fact community input?
Sure. CEO?
Through Mr Mayor, I'll probably need to get a more detailed answer for you. I think from memory, the strategy review is what they call a health check, which the department has a prescribed process and format for that, and it's not a very detailed review at this stage. But I think the intention is that we will be doing some workshop with elected members, but I'll get a more detailed response to find out where that project's at.
Thank you. Further questions on this item, councillors? Councillor Steele?
Just page 45 of 221, making sure I'm on the right thing. Just about the Bunbury Brighter campaign. I'm in the right one, aren't I? Make sure. That's all in-house though, isn't it? That's no external.
CEO. So it's the $50,000 budget.
Yeah, again, Mayor, I'll probably take that on notice unless anyone else has any further information to add to that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you. 10.3.2, schedule accounts paid. Any questions, councillors? Thank you. 10.3.3, financial management report. No questions, thank you. 10.3.4, which is the financial report for October. Any questions on this one? Councillor Gassett?
Yes, I'll ask the usual question. Page 201, 202, 204, just on the financial ratios. Can we just keep an eye on these, please, Mr Mayor?
Yes. Any further questions? Thank you. 10.3.5, Council worked through this briefing session the other week on this one. I think there was a minor update from the CEO. Want to just add any changes you made, CEO?
There was a minor change made for a small amount of money to help with the EBA negotiations and the discussions that we will start in the next month or so. So there is some work that we might need to get some independent analysis done. So there was a small amount of consultancy to do that.
Questions on this item, councillors?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Gassett.
Sorry, I missed that last question that you asked.
Oh, so we did have a briefing, a workshop on this the other day where we went through it and obviously had some conversations about those changes. But my question to the CEO was just that the CEO had indicated to me today there were some slight changes to that initial workshop we had in terms of what was added in as opposed to the other changes that were discussed.
Okay, so just a question on the budget, Mr Mayor. Given we've increased the total budget by $2.8 million, and that 1.8 mil was for, sorry, 1.35 was for the BHRC. Are we expecting any more? And, you know, just wondering where the money is coming from for these operational deficits. Or can we keep an eye on it?
Well, those decisions have been made previously. CEO, I'm not sure if you got an answer for that at all.
Probably get the manager of finance to give some commentary around that.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Councillor, a number of months ago, approved further expenditure for BHRC. That was for the operating subsidy or deficit position that BHRC was in, and that was $950,000, and there was a further $400,000 for legacy issues, and that was going to come from the waste reserve. There was two other items that I just watch and see, and that's in regards to the timber that is there, and also the design of a new cell, if that was to occur.
Mr Mayor, if there's any more demand on council funds for operational deficits for the Bunbury Harbour Regional Council, how much more have we got left in the reserve, in the waste reserve, or other funding available?
So, Councillor Cassidy, if there is any other requests that will obviously come through council, like other requests have do, that will have to come through here from this council for a council decision, and at that stage of those how they'll be funded will be determined by this council. In terms of what's in the current waste reserve, I'm not sure. Does the manager of finance have an answer for that? Or through the CEO?
Happy for the manager of finance to answer that question.
Through you, Mr Mayor. From memory, there's about $3 million in the waste reserve, but there is other expenditure and pressures on that through the waste, our own waste operations as well. So, as you said, Mr Mayor, when that comes to council, we will consider the funding options for those requests.
Councillor Steele, do you have a question?
Well, the question, I'm not quite sure I should actually say this aloud next week so it's recorded, but I'd like to thank that on page 214, we have a budget for councillor chairs. Thank you.
Take that as a question.
I feel like I've had a victory.
Any further questions?
Who gets to choose the chairs, Mr Mayor?
Not me.
Just me,
Thank you. 10.4.1, councillors, and if there is any questions of any of the candidates, that is a confidential document, so we can go behind closed doors if you would like to ask any questions. Sorry, Councillor Andrew. Yeah, just mindful, councillors, that obviously this is still being recorded. So yeah, there are the confidential matrix there. So if you want to ask about that, we'll just have to go behind closed doors.
No, it was
Just a general? Yep.
something that we were discussing in the back room. Are these the only persons that have applied?
I would imagine so, CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not aware of the process, but I'm assuming that there was a nomination process that they did go through.
And we're getting a nod from the director, so yes. Further than that?
Thank you. Yep.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just to add to that, we did get a lot of feedback from various parties in the tourism industry that this time of year is not the best for them to be able to participate in a working group leading into Christmas. So timing seemed to be a big factor that dissuaded people from applying, but those were the names that we got.
just a supplementary, after speaking with the manager, the director, sorry, and I was informed that there was no one from the hotels group, I did approach a hotel group in town, and they were keen. So that sort of leaves them out of this loop.
We can probably get, Director's got a response for that.
Thank you, Director.
Through Mr. Mayor, none of the hotel groups applied. That was the reason for part 2 of this recommendation of requesting that the CEO can directly approach people in that industry to see if we can get some representation from those sectors.
Councillor Steele, do you have a question? Oh, no. Any other questions on this item? If you could get Councillor Andrew, that'd be great, thank you. And Councillor, at the drafting of this report, obviously there wasn't, sorry, at the drafting of this agenda, the report wasn't prepared for this motion on notice. I believe there has been a little bit of conversation and work done, so I might just ask the CEO to give an update of where that is at the moment.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have been in discussion with Councillor Gassab around the motion and how we might deal with that coming to next week's council meeting. Elected members are probably aware that Councillor Gassab did have an original motion that was around initiating and hosting a forum on homelessness and associated issues, and it had a second part which invites the neighbouring local government authorities to join the initiative of the Homeless Forum and invite stakeholders to the Homeless Forum, including homeless persons, service agencies, not-for-profit agencies, including faith-based organisations, community organisations, mental health providers, accommodation providers, the public, relevant state and federal government ministers and parliamentary representatives, and regionally based private sector businesses and corporations. So that was, so we do have on currently the motion that is before us. So this is, the preference was to talk to Councillor Gassab about the initial motion, which was about the forum. So the discussions have been very much about that. Our feeling from the administration point of view is the forum would be a great opportunity to update the community around what the city is currently doing in terms of homelessness and accommodation, and also service providers within our region. By having that forum, what we could do is use that as an education process in terms of what we are doing and what progress that's been made, not just by the City of Bunbury, but by other parties and other providers, and then look at some of the gaps that we might have that might well inform the next steps. So I think Councillor Gassab, and he can obviously make comment in a minute, the one issue was not, and certainly some of the feedback that he's received is not just to have a forum to be just another talking session, but for that to have some meaningful engagement and obviously have some outcomes that we can then work towards. So certainly from the administration perspective, if that was acceptable to Councillor Gassab, we would be happy to move that. I know we've got a conversation with Don tomorrow to talk about homelessness. I think that, Mayor, that's on our agenda, so we can certainly have that conversation. The second limb of that may be to create, one of the outcomes of the forum may be to consider creating a working group across the region to continue the discussions around homelessness and the accommodation, the associated accommodation around that. So that's where we've got to. We're having a conversation with Don Punch tomorrow. That will help just to gauge his views, but certainly that's where we would consider that motion would be better framed to meet the outcomes. But Councillor Gassab probably may want to add.
Councillor Gassab.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to see whether anybody else got any feedback or comments.
Happy to open to the question. Open this to the floor. Obviously, it's difficult when there's no report there. So obviously, if that'll be provided by tomorrow. But yeah, if any other elected members has any questions on that, happy to hear them. Councillor Steele?
I like the idea of a forum that has actions at the end of it. I think that, or outcomes and actions, that I do think that's a good place to start. And then from there, if then there's anything lacking, then we could then progress further from there. But I think it's a good starting point for that, for sure.
Councillor Turner?
Yeah, if I may. So in respect, you're saying that we're going to put on the forum?
The city host. I believe that's the intent, CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the intent would be that that we would host and put on the forum and arrange it. In terms of time frame, it might be difficult to do that this side of Christmas, but at the very least, what you'd want to do is get the invites out. You know, perhaps in December for, I would suggest maybe a February forum that we would have. I think it would be difficult to get the sorts of participation that we would want in this forum without giving sufficient time for people to get that into their diaries. But the intention is that the city would host.
Just a couple other questions. I'm just fearful, or not fearful, worried that we're replicating stuff that's already sort of happening. Why aren't we asking the state government to hold the forum instead of us incurring the cost of something that is a state government issue?
CEO?
Look, that's absolutely something, thank you, Mayor, that's absolutely something we could consider in our conversations. If this motion is supported, then we'll certainly then look at the practicalities of that and whether we can engage the state government agencies to fund, even if it is, even if they fund it and we host it.
Any further questions or comments?
Final comment, comment. Not about the forum, but about the possible working group on homelessness and housing supply. The intention was to ask the city, if the council approves it, to set up a working group to initiate it, but the city doesn't own it. It becomes owned by whoever participates in it, whether it's other local shires as well, other stakeholders, state and federal representation. So it becomes a community, regional community working group, just mindful of putting pressure on council to do things. So but we initiate it, we instigate it. And, you know, for the sake of the community.
Oh, Councillor Turner?
In respect to that, not so much a question, I would also put it on the state government to initiate that and invite the councils to be involved in it and the state players as well.
Can I ask?
I just feel it would have a lot more guts behind it if the state government is one initiating it.
I don't disagree. I'd like to put less pressure on council, but the working group, would be the way we're going now. That's recommended by the CEO at this stage, is we try to get the forum, and maybe that would inform a working group and who may be the owner.
Councillor Steck?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm leaning towards that way too. I mean, you have a meeting tomorrow with Don, who is obviously at the forefront of this issue too, given the state government's initiatives and also funding. However, I'd like to look at it further where as Councillor Gassif has said, where land opportunities may be available and various other outcomes may be available to achieve a greater delivery for homelessness. And there's a couple of key points that these forums can get to a position to create that change. And totally support going to Don and asking for the money for the leadership to come from him and his office, but we are the regional city and we need to take that mantra. And considering that we've got all the significant advertising for whatever reason around this, I think we should take the leadership role.
Thank you, Councillor Steck. Thanks for those comments. As we said, that report will be drafted and circulated tomorrow. And if we need to have some further conversation about that, about how it all comes up, we can obviously do that next Tuesday. Anything further, CEO?
No, thank you, Mayor. We will, along the lines and taking the feedback that we've had tonight, prepare the motion and the supporting information that'll be available tomorrow.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you very much. I'll declare this briefing session closed.